We're recording now. We're trying a whole new thing.
Look at us. I'm not even looking at the camera when we start.
Okay, let me introduce us properly. All right, Tonya, hi. That's the intro.
Hi.
Long time no see.
It's been a minute and a half
We've been
for
trading
us.
voice messages and we were like, we need to record a Biz Buddy conversation. I will preface today's recording, and I will say that we originally today were going to record with our dear friend Rachel Allen, and that has been postponed until October. The three of us have so much to say right now about the state of online entrepreneurship, but we're going to save that. But you and I have still been all this time trading our asynchronous voice messages and supporting each other. And then we saw some patterns. So we're going to talk about all that today. And the pattern is under the umbrella of what is real collaboration. So many things happened. I launched a podcast. You helped a client do a book launch, which was massive. Yeah,
Yes.
lots of things. And then we're just noticing in general, like trends in the way people are talking about collaboration as well. Yeah, all those things happened.
Yes, they all happened. That is a fact. Some of them happened in nice, tidy little boxes with bows, and some happened in slightly controlled chaos.
Yeah.
But we are here. I mean, we're on the other side.
We are, and it feels really good. I know you had really good results with the book launch for your client. It was happening at the same time the podcast was launching.
Yeah, and do we get to pause and have everybody watching congratulate you on the launch of your podcast? I really do believe, I say this all the time with book launches, like when I'm doing like my big on launch day, I always do a big thing for my author. And I'm always like launching a book baby out into the world is no small feat. No. And a podcast is the same way, but what people don't realize, because people think, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a book, whether it's some other product, people think, oh, look at you, right? You've got like your name on something. And what nobody realizes, unless you have launched your own work, like this is the most vulnerable experience you will have, because you are putting your personal beliefs out into the world. Like this is your brand of how this should be framed. Here's the container. And you're putting that out into the world. And the world does not know your blood, sweat, and tears. The world does not know all the hilltops and valleys you had to go through to get here. And the world loves to tell you all the coulda, woulda, shouldas around your. So when you put it out there, you brace yourself for criticism, because you know it's coming. And it doesn't matter how fair, how productive that criticism might be, it still stings. So I think it's important to just say, congratulations, you were brave. You were
Thank you. I was genuinely touched by the response. We landed in the top 25% of podcasts, which I think is a really big accomplishment, considering that I have a teeny tiny list, and most of the people, not all, but most of the people I invited into the space also have very small lists. Some of them who I invited in intentionally have no habit of marketing. And this was one guest in particular. It was her very first podcast interview ever. So I think it just goes to show that, I mean, we're going to get into this with the collaboration and the community aspect, that when you do things thoughtfully and not haphazardly, you get some really beautiful results. I have also, this is the energetics person in me, but I will also say, and this is for anybody, I know we have a couple of like core people who follow our little Biz Buddy series. I will say that for anybody who's in the energetics part of it, I have done enough of these like summits or now a podcast or whatever to know as the organizer that the people who in the community of guests are the most generous in terms of sharing and celebrating others have always received the biggest benefit in return. And the thing that I noticed last week is the people who their episodes aren't coming out until October, and they were like, the podcast is coming out. Oh my God. And they were hyping everybody up. They were sending me text messages. One of them, Eunice, she sent me a screenshot from one of her posts on Instagram. She's like, I've never had traffic like this before. Instagram sent her a thing that was like, your traffic is up by 384%. Like, this is different. And you picked up followers and subscribers. So did I. Everybody did. And I think that there is, you could call it magic, but also it's just the laws of business. Like, I just think it's the way it works. And I think you were right when you were like, let's talk about community for our chat today, because you pointed out how much the guesting group turned into a community. And honestly hadn't thought about it like that at all. I was just like, I just want to get my friends together and do this wackadoo experiment, which apparently other people want to listen to. So I just wonder, are we just like weirdos, Tonya? Or
Yes. And that might not have anything to do with what we're talking about, but we are definitely weirdos. I want to mention a couple of things before we go too far here. So one is, I have a program called Let's Get Social. And in that program, like one of the first things I talk about is if you want good followers, you have to be a good follower. And so part of the juice behind the podcast launch, I think, is that you, first of all, you set a beautiful stage. You framed that up for us so well. You invited each of us who were guests at every step of the process. So we knew the concept. You had that Notion board with all the things. And I'll be honest, I did not read all the things. But you know, what I read, I was just like, I am more prepared for this interview than I've ever been prepared for an interview before. And because you did 9/10 of the recording before the launch, you did all the recording
no,
before the
there's
launch,
still one
right?
episode. Yeah.
Okay. So you've done all but one episode before the launch. I had the opportunity to get to
Yeah.
know the guests even before I recorded, and you've invited everybody into your process because you've been talking about this on social and in your emails and everything even before you started to record. So by inviting me in, giving me these opportunities to get to know everybody else, when it came to launch time, it was like I'm invested in Eunice. I don't know Eunice, but I am invested in the success of her episode. I'm invested in the success of Lindsay's episode. Lindsay's
Yep.
episode's already dropped, right? But like, I want every episode to get more downloads than the episode before it. Not, yes, I am bought into you and your success, and I think this podcast concept is amazing, but because I'm that invested in each individual you've invited, like knowing that one guest had no marketing experience, had never been on a podcast. Like, I want this to blow her mind so that she goes, I'm going to be on podcasts all the time.
Yes. And also has an experienced critical eye in the future for saying yes to certain things. Because we've all done guesting spots or been in summits or been invited to speak at conferences or whatever. And it's just such a hot mess behind the scenes. And you think when something is true hot mess, you don't get the full benefit from everyone coming together. There's a story I heard through somebody that I collaborate with, not through the podcast. And a year ago, she was invited into one of those like bundle products. And the bundle product person was like a pretty big Nick, had a big list. And so she thought, well, this will be great. This will be very
Yeah.
fruitful. And it was so disorganized and everything was last minute. She got really no benefit from any of that. And so thank you for the compliments.
You are welcome. And that brings up, because I know we want to talk about community, and this is part of it, I think, but we also want to talk about collaborative relationships. Something that you and me have never talked about, but what you said rings true, is everything we do is a matter of balancing the practical versus the ideal, right? We're not going to nail 100% in every single aspect. So when you're somebody who has a ginormous list, you can be disorganized, right? Because mathematics tend to work out, right? So if it's like, you know what, 10%, usually it's 1%, right? So if you just say 10% of the list is going to go to the thing, like no matter what, right? Then you're like, okay, I guess as long as I get 10%, that's fine. You can wager your comfort with risk around that, and you can decide how organized you want to be and everything else. when your list or your community is small, you don't have the luxury of
Ding, ding,
disorganization.
ding. Yeah, I think so. It's there's less to hide behind. You're more exposed.
Less to hide behind. Yeah, you're more exposed usually because it's a solo job, right? You have Chris and you have other people helping you with the podcast. Folks with larger lists
They
tend to
do.
have teams. You don't have anybody to
No,
pass
I
the
am very
buck
much a
to.
solopreneur, and I thought I would have more administrative support walking into the project, and then for lots of circumstances, that did not work, and then I walked into the podcast, and I think being a systems-oriented person, that definitely helps, but I processed all those show notes. Oh,
Yeah.
there was a lot of work that had to be done, and I it's funny because you and I had been chatting on voice notes this whole time. You're doing the book launch. I'm doing the podcast launch. I was in Denver finishing last minute recordings, going to Podcast Movement, and we're still sending voice notes. And you had pointed out some really critical things about making smart decisions. And I saw that happen in the book launch you did for your client as well, when it's like, when do you double down on the big investment? I need help with this thing. What am I going to focus on in terms of quality? And what is the thing that for now I'm just going to ship it? It's good enough. Just going to get it done.
Yeah.
And you pointed out some pretty obvious ones that are literally easy to look at, but like the artwork that I used for the podcast, I had plenty of criticisms from various corners about how super graphic designed it was before it went out. And I thought, if I spent my time waiting for perfect artwork to come back, this thing's never going to go out the door. And the truth is, it's just like building a website for your business. You're going to change the fonts and the color palette day after day. And it's like, so shit, like the meat of it, and like take care of the aesthetics now. Even at Podcast Movement, I actually just agreed to do his podcast. He messaged me afterward, but there was a gentleman who had a booth, and he like the podcaster's podcaster, and he has a podcast about podcasting. And we were chatting, and he saw my stickers and my buttons, and I knew they were incredibly imperfect. And he was like, if it was me, he's like, this is what I would do. He was like, you need the tagline to be bigger. Shrink this, take out that. And I went home and I did it. And I stood there in front of him, and this could sting because it's a very vulnerable thing. I'm like putting my thing out for the first time. And then I was just like, thank you for the feedback. I think that there is a skill in accepting the feedback. And I'm kind of wondering, is this why our biz buddy conversations have gotten so good and we've gotten closer and closer, because we'll tell each other things that like we don't always want to hear.
Yeah, I think so. And that makes me want to ask, so what haven't you wanted to hear? But I definitely think that there is an art to accepting feedback. Part of it is being able
Yeah.
to filter, right? Not everything, even if it's good, not everything needs to be acted
No.
on right now. I'm working on a project, it's like a guide, right? And eventually this is going to have like statewide distribution. And I had to go into the project going, okay, we're going to do 3 major revisions, because something that's statewide, like if I went into that thinking I was going to be able to button that up perfect, no way, right? So, okay, let's not have an unreasonable expectation. We did the done is better than perfect version, and then we circulated it to some experts that quite honestly we should have circulated it to before, but hey, done is better than perfect, right? So took it to them, and we've made some changes based on early response, but now we need you guys to make sure those changes didn't make anything wrong. So now I'm in that process, and the experts have come back with exactly what I asked them to do. And then, well, have you thought about this? And have you thought about that? Because this would be so much richer if you could do this and this and this and this. Yes, they are right. But that would mean that I would have to postpone by about 3 months the corrected version. And so I've told them all, those are great ideas. However, I need this version to be as accurate as possible right now. So the only thing I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make your fact corrections. And then once that's good, and once we know everything in here is right and current and accurate, then we can talk about what to add to make it more user friendly, more beneficial.
Yeah. It's stages.
but it would have been very easy to change everything, like to feel like I had to make all the changes
Well,
right off the bat.
like one of the things that we always wanted to do with the series was to give like an open window or doorway so people could see some of what kind of happens in these private spaces where they're just not going to be on our WhatsApp discussions. They're just not. And, but I think something that happens is you and I will throw out a lot of really great ideas or suggestions or anything. And it's never framed in a way of, you know what you need to do? And then it's like, and I see people in business groups do this with each other where it's so easy, being the sofa armchair expert to be like, you know what you need to do with your business? You need to do bleh. And then the other person on the receiving end then feels like, oh my God, I have this laundry list of things. I don't know what to do with that. And I think one of the things that our followers can take away from the Biz Buddy series is learning how to deliver feedback as well. I always say, like, on an energetic perspective, that a lot of times when we're suggesting something to someone else, it is very free. Unless you're like being hired to coach somebody for something, when it's in a buddy space, usually there's something in that for you. If you're feeling like, you know what, Tonya really needs boom, boom, boom. And it's like, okay, where do I need to do that? Like, what am I not doing right now? Because it's really easy to point and look out instead of doing the work. And I just know that, like, when you and I do feedback for each other, we don't do that.
So let's make this a little bit more practical for our viewer, person who is joining us in our Business Bestie conversation. What would you say are your three, like top three or like bits of advice in terms of what to think about when wanting to provide
Top three
feedback?
points.
If you were going to do a how to provide feedback demo,
Okay.
what
Oh
would you
God,
put
top
in?
three. Okay.
Well, then I'm going to do top three, and then we can talk about if
Okay.
there's anything we're forgetting.
Okay, top three things. I would say the thing needs to be timely in terms of it can't be something that happened like last year, or you think it's like, wouldn't it be great if you did whatever in some unnamed date in the future kind of thing. Unless you're having a brainstorming session, that's different. But like usually when you're giving feedback about something, like it has to be about the thing that's happening now. The other thing too is like you have to have an awareness of scope. So if somebody has limited resources, you don't want to be like, you know what I would do? You should do it. Have you considered? And then you give them something that is
Mm-hmm.
not possible for them to accomplish in that fashion. And then I think the other thing is like, honestly, it's the human part. It's the being continuing to be there. You're not just like dropping a bomb on somebody's doorstep and then running away and being like, "Look at me. I'm such a good business friend. I just blew up everything that you needed blowing up." And no. Actually, I'm going to add a fourth thing too. Bonus. And it's not and it doesn't fall in the guise of complaining or even I don't really know how to I don't know what the words are for this. I'm still finding the words right now. I see people engaging in Schadenfreude, where they're like, look at her. Well, that didn't go well. You know what we should do? We should do it better. It's like that is not really a healthy place to work from because you're not actually working from your own actual strategy. You're just like working off
Right.
of somebody else's ability to be vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
something. And
Yeah.
I've seen that too. Maybe I cheated. That's 4.
Okay, let's recap them. So I got the
Oh
first
god,
one
you're
was
taking notes. You're
timely.
so good.
I totally am. The second one was scope, but it's okay. I'm not that great because I lost the last two
Yeah.
because they blended together for me. So first one was timely. The second one was scope, like understanding their own container of practical
Yes.
versus ideal.
The
What was the
third
third?
one was, I guess we could just combine it. I think it really I'm gonna go with the last point about I don't know what the word is for it though, Tanya. Like not petty, not what is the word? Um
So what I would say is,
like it's focused from a place that really has to do with like your business and not because you're reacting. So it's more conscious and considered rather than just reacting to
yeah.
something else that happened because that just shows me how much like you end up not paying attention to what's really going on in your business and
I think that sounds great. So timely, scope, and then conscious and considered. Because I do think that's important, right? Is it's not about you're better than so and so, or oh my gosh, look at how that person flopped. Here's all the let's tear apart what they did and then let's build something together, we think is 10 times better. And that's also where I think in a bestie relationship, the honest conversations and feedback bleed into gossip.
Yeah.
And we have talked about how we're very conscious of not crossing that line into gossip in the conversations that we do.
Yeah.
I'm going to add mine, and I have four, but so it's okay. And then, like, we can talk about our thoughts on each other's thoughts. So, the first thing I would say before offering feedback is asking for permission. Even in a business bestie
Yes.
relationship, you don't always have permission. I don't feel like you can assume permission. So there was a situation we had and not too long ago, right, where I wanted to talk numbers and I was frustrated, super frustrated. And so I was like, I want to talk about this thing with you. These are the things it involves. Is it okay if I
Yeah.
have that conversation with you? Because I'm at a high point of frustration. I may not have my
Mhm.
nice words, but I'd like to have that conversation. And then you respond, you're like, I'm here for it. Ask away. Okay, great. So I feel like you have to ask for permission on both sides. Is it okay for me to put this into this conversation? And is it okay for me to tell you what I think
Yeah.
or what I see? So that's the first one, is permission. The second thing, this is very specific to feedback, but it needs to be objective. And this comes from my life in university land and working on design projects and social media projects and like marketing campaigns. And if I had a nickel for every white haired dude who told me that it just didn't pop and he needed more color to make it pop, but never ever defined what
Mhm.
pop meant, I would not have student loans. Okay. And right now I'm on track to pay my student loans sometime before I turn 78. So, but it's like it has to be objective. And so like that's number two. And number three is specific. So like in terms of objective, like, okay, what is objectively right or
Yeah.
wrong here? What can you say? You're like, you can say, when I'm looking at it, I feel like the top
Yeah.
overshadows the bottom or whatever. And then in terms of being specific, it's like, hey, so if you feel like it's blah, what exactly is blah? Do you need a different picture? Do you need a
Right.
different headline? And so when we're having these conversations, because of course you and me do not nitpick design specifically, one thing that we will do is go, okay, I have seen other people do A,
Mhm.
B, and C. But given what I know about your business, it seems to me like what's going on here is this. And then
Yeah, we do.
we sharpen the point on that specific aspect that's different about our own business or that is the same. So when we were talking about the areas of the podcast that you chose to invest heavily in and to not invest in as much, when you said, I was going to get a graphic designer and I think I'm just going to do my own graphics. And for me, as somebody who has a lot of clients who have podcasts, I've been working in podcasting space
Yeah.
for a really long time. It's like I don't know of a single person who has talked about a podcast they loved and said, "Oh my gosh, guys, the cover art."
Yes.
Just talk about the art of this podcast. It's smoreless. I don't even know what the cover art is, and yet I love it. I love the Huberman podcast. It's just black with like white, right? That's like everything he
Yeah.
does is in black and white. I'm not sitting there going, "Oh, that Andrew Huberman, he's got such a great like salt and pepper beat." No, I talk about the content, right? I talk about the organization. I love how his podcast interviews are basically literature reviews, right? And I just so dig it and like nerd out into the research on that. And the Smart List podcast, I talk about how I like the banter back
Mhm.
and forth between the hosts and the guests and such. Very specific things I like, none of which has anything to do with the
No,
cover.
also, okay, there's another thing that happens in the space of giving feedback between us. I would say check on all your things.
Mhm.
And also, we just like simply, maybe there's a fifth blanket thing, but like we just simply hold space for the other person to verbally process and find the articulation for this is my justification so that I understand why and I feel better about my decision and blah, 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 blah. And usually in like big mastermind programs or in a coaching container, like that's not really the space for that, or there's really no space for it. Having your biz buddy space to hold that so that you can work on it iteratively. I mean, there's been times where it's taken us days or weeks for either of us to get to the point on something.
Right?
And I think the graphic thing is a great example of this, because I remember leaving you voice notes over the last couple of months where I was like, I think I am. No, I'm not. I think I am. No, I'm not. And then I just started talking like, I was analyzing graphics today. And did you know these celebrities, like their graphics are awful? Like, if that celebrity's graphic is awful, mine's great. It's fine. Done and done.
Exactly. And so what I would say is that last point really has to do with being reflective. So one of the things that we do differently than I see in a lot of other what people think are business bestie conversations is part of how we carry the conversation forward is going, okay, so here's what I think I'm hearing you say. Like many times I've been like, oh, Mary, here's what I think I'm hearing. Like, how does that sound? How does that feel? And then it gives you the opportunity to know, okay, so of everything I just said that feels like this big jumble and it's huge and stuff and chaotic, this is the thread that came out of that. Okay, true or not true? But like, regardless of whether it's true or not true, that gives you then another layer to react to and to think about. And I think that's really where these types of business bestie relationships move forward.
I would agree too. Something else that's occurring to me too, since we're just in this reflective space of like, how do our conversations between us feel so different compared to other spaces that we've been in? And I think part of it too is like the mishmash of like life and entrepreneurship. And we'll hold space for, oh my God, life has taken over. I'm having a week. There are things that are happening right now, and I'm tired and I don't have the bandwidth. And I've seen in other communities and group chats confusion sometimes on like the proportion of like where and how you hold space for things. Like I've seen business just completely fall to the side, even though it's a business group,
Yeah.
because you're really struggling with life things. And I'm really on a soapbox right now about, is it a coaching need or is it a therapy need? And I think like our biz buddies can help us identify when we're really in a season. I don't think you have any more capacity to actually work on strategy right now. Have you considered talking to a therapist? And you and I have not been suffering from any of that. But I think like there are people who are in a ready for business space, and they are honestly in unofficial therapy spaces right now. And they're frustrated because I keep
Yeah.
hearing from them, and I know you have too, because we're having conversations about it, where they're like, I just need to find that group. I need to find that community. I'm still looking for my community. And it's like, why are you still looking for your community? Maybe you should just create some of your own. You and I have basically created like a little bit of a thing. Rachel, who will join us in a few weeks to record, she also will have some of these like more private conversations with us, and not to the extent that you and I do, at least not yet. I don't know. But like I was telling you that I've noticed that those of us who are like, I'm ready for the business, like we're starting, the molecules have been like coming together, bit by bit throughout this summer. It's been really fascinating to experience and to watch. But I'm wondering for you as a community manager, because also your podcast episode is dropping on Wednesday and it is fire. It's all about community. What, like, with all of those feedback points we just gave everybody, what do you think somebody should do if they realize, like, oh shit, like I'm in a group that is an unofficial therapy space? And like, while I appreciate that, I signed up for business and I need business. What do they do? What do you
Right.
do when that happens? What have you done when it happened?
Here, so I'm going to give you the real answer, and then I'm going to follow up with saying
Yes.
it's the hardest, right? The real
Yeah.
answer is you leave. Like you have to leave. Well, I mean, I guess you don't have to leave, but you have to recognize then if you want a biz buddy relationship in some way, you're going to have to add that to what you're already doing. And very few of us have more time. So chances are you're going to have to leave that group so that you have the available time to then go put forth in a much more productive environment. But it's hard because a lot of times the way that it gets into a therapy place is we've had time, like we've done some life together. It's probably not well moderated or facilitated. A lot of times I see this happen, and I'm not knocking peer-to-peer
Yeah.
masterminds. They have a place. But a lot of times it happens in a peer-to-peer mastermind because maybe one person brought the group together, but they're not a skilled facilitator and they're not keeping it to whatever the purpose and the promise was initially. And so it ventures off into therapy, or just oftentimes it's not even therapy, it's just
Yeah.
commiseration, right? So I think the first thing is you have to be willing to leave, and you have to understand that you don't have to leave now, but that's at some point you're going to run out of hours in
Yeah.
the day and you're going to have to step away and you're going to have to figure out how to do that. So that's the first thing, right? And then it's a matter of, I always tell people it comes down to a list. And I know people roll their eyes, but you've got to write down what's working about this for me, what's not. What is it that I need out of a peer to peer business relationship right now? Okay, which of those things am I getting here? Which am I not? And then what's the cost of not getting
Yeah.
those things? I exited a group recently that I'd been part of for some time, not a huge amount of time, but more than a year. And it was a group where I recognized that I was being viewed as the expert. It wasn't a peer to peer program, it was a paid program, but I was starting to be viewed as
Yeah.
the expert, which to some degree feels good, right? I got an ego just like anybody else. But then it's going, okay, but am I in a position to pay a fee to somebody to then be co facilitating?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's okay if we all take turns co facilitating,
Yeah.
right? If, let's take you, me, Rachel, right, in a group. So you, me, Rachel, in a group, I could see there would be times where we would have a discussion where you're the standout expert. And so you're doing like all the cup filling there. And then there would be a time where
Mhm.
she's the standout expert, right? Because she's such a glorious copywriter. And she's really plugged into a lot of like social
Yeah.
justice issues. So she's got this like copywriting plus ethics
Yeah.
expertise that a
Yeah.
lot of us don't have, that she would be the leader. And then there would be things where, you know, like community or maybe even like book marketing or whatever, where I would be the clear leader in the conversation. But we would take turns. It would be equitable because
Yeah.
that's who we are. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you show up every time and you're giving more than you're
Yeah.
getting. You've got to be willing to honestly write that all down and then go, okay, so what's next? What am I looking for? I have always been very intentional about what groups I choose to be a part of
Yeah.
and why, so that I can revisit whether I'm getting what I set out to get throughout the process. And am I giving? There's one group I was in. The dynamic of the group has
Yeah.
changed over time. I am now the only service provider in that group. Everybody else runs a
Oh,
product
wow.
based business. So I'm like, do I really have anything to contribute here? It's not that I don't have some ideas for product based businesses, but it's like
Yeah.
one thing is not like the others. And so that's been something that I've talked to the leader about. I've even mentioned it in the group. It's like I don't run a traffic based business, so I don't have a lot to say about that. And in all fairness, they don't have a lot to say about my business either because they've never been service providers and they don't know what it's like to have a business that's not like dependent
Mm-hmm.
on
Mm-hmm.
traffic.
Yeah.
So that's another one. It's like I'm right now, I'm like, okay, I do really like the analog aspect of it. I've seen what they're
Uh-huh.
doing and going, could that work in a service provider role? Like I'm getting something out of it. But at some point, I could see myself going, okay, I need to be in more of a service provider
Yeah.
community.
I think talking through all of this recently with you and hearing while you've been reasoning through this on your end, it gave me a lot of context for making decisions on my end too. Let's see. I think since the last time our last Biz Buddy recording went out, so many things have happened, not just launches, but we're getting towards the fourth quarter, and there's definitely been a shift in demand on both of our times and all the things. I have found myself shutting down my calendar to any calls unless we are legitimately already talking about dollars and cents being transferred, and 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 also becoming very, for myself, critical in that like analytical sense of being critical about where am I spending my time? Everybody, that's a generalization. A lot of people have been wanting me to be here, there, and everywhere. And I'm just like, I can't get work done. I can't move these things forward. So I think that also with all of the like astrology and energetics that are happening right now, that it's the perfect time to be doing inventory on where you spend your time, and decisions don't have to be made right away. There was one recently where I've gently extricated myself, and the offer is still there to come whenever I want. That's great. Thank you. Things don't have to end in an uncomfortable way. They don't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be super blunt. But I think taking your time to realize what is really happening here. Is this a good thing? And I just have this feeling like there are so many people who are paying for groups, also doing peer-to-peer masterminds that are free, and like they're not quite sure how to make the change. I think this kind of organically happened for you and me. But I feel like people usually have there's like one person that they know they really have good conversations with. And I think like you need to double down on that. Like I would encourage them to fire up WhatsApp like you and I did a year ago
Mm-hmm.
and give yourself space to talk it out. There's going to be a little bit of like clearing that has to happen, but yeah, those are my thoughts on the state of peer-to-peer masterminding right now.
Yeah, you brought up a lot of good points. And so I was just reflecting on a community that I was in. And it was not a low ticket program. It was like a $15,000
Yeah.
a year program. And I was in it for more than a year. And there was a point where I was like, okay, probably not getting a whole lot out of the program as it was
Yeah.
designed at this point, but I'm getting a lot out of the community. It was one of those programs that just
Yeah.
attracts the best people. The best people according to me may not be the best people according to you or to somebody else, but they were the best people according to me. And so I stayed on for a long time just for that
Yeah.
networking benefit. And those there was a lot of community support, which means if like you did a launch, like everybody showed up to support
Mm.
yours. Now, not very few people bought your stuff, right? Because that wasn't what it was about. It was just like, but we'll show up because we know that it's so much easier to do a webinar or to do a
Yes.
launch when you've got like
Yeah.
20 people in the audience. And you know what? We're only
Yeah.
seven, but hey, we
Yeah.
seven will be there for you. And we did that. And I learned how to be a really good collaborator with people who were in very different
Yeah.
businesses from me through that experience. But then come year three, it's okay. So now I'm in a point where I'm actually just paying to hang out with friends
Yes.
because there's 30 people in the group, and 10 of these people are people I
Yeah.
would hang out with outside of this space. And we now have enough of a relationship that we
Yeah.
can do
Yeah.
that. Right. So then I exited. And of course, this was a community that had a cap, right? It was like maxed out at 30. So by exiting, I opened space for
Yeah.
somebody else.
Yeah.
And that person who presumably who would fill my spot was where I was at 3 years
Yeah.
before. So I got to make space for them, but I didn't lose any of my friends from the group.
Yeah, I think there's this feeling of loss, like if you make a change, you're gonna lose something, and that's just not what happens.
Not if it's meant to be. I do know there are groups. So Katya
Yeah.
Varbanova is some. What I love about her is you just always know
Yeah.
where she stands. You don't have to agree with her, but there is no
Yeah.
ambiguity about what she thinks about something. And so she was soapboxing about high ticket programs and masterminds, and she was just, and her thing was like something along the lines of the quality of the people based on how you're treated when you choose to leave. And so I'm not against these high ticket programs. What I'm against are these high ticket programs that, like, when somebody leaves, that person's dead to them. Because then I have to ask, what is the high ticket program really about? Because wouldn't you want somebody to take your program and outgrow it? Wouldn't you want that level of success for them to go out in the world? When you shame people for leaving, I question whether what you say works like you say it works.
Oh, Tanya, that's a truth bomb mic drop. Oof.
Again, that's why I love her. And so she said that, and then she just said, hey, if I'm wrong, say so. Drop here any program you know of that you could still be friends with those folks when
Yeah.
you left. And honestly, there was about 3 answers. Like there were 3 potentials and multiple people all said those 3 things. So she probably got like
Mhm.
25 comments, but it all came down to the same 3 programs.
Oh, dang, that's good. That is really good. There's It's so interesting because, like, I've been processing the audio for all y'all's interviews and all y'all.
Oh, y'all.
Listen, I picked up some things living down south and, like, they have not left my vernacular, and I don't think they ever are. They just aren't there now. Um, there was a conversation topic about in those interviews about how not everybody's meant to be with you forever, and I think we need to normalize that a little bit. We really do. I mean, there are some things that grow into very special relationships, which I would say I definitely personally I feel like I have that with you. And that's a beautiful thing. And there are plenty of groups, relationship situations where you just start growing in different directions and it's okay. It doesn't mean you have to be mortal enemies. It doesn't mean that you can't like I think that there's just such this absolutism that needs to die a death right now in entrepreneurship of like it is or it isn't. And it's a little more complicated than that. Like humans are a bit more nuanced than that. And sometimes people need to go off on their hero's journey and go do something, and then you come back years later. Going to podcast movement was a very interesting experience for me because weirdly enough, I have a lot of contacts in Denver and I made time to go early so I could go visit with people that I haven't seen in a long time. And then there were people who showed up at the conference. I didn't know were going and I hadn't seen them in a long time. And we would pass each other and it was like, oh my goodness. And everyone's gone through these journeys and they're continuing to and you discover that like sometimes you just need distance, time and space to go do what you got to do. Actually, this really happened. I have a really great example of this happened earlier in the summer in June when I went to Boise to the ConvertKit conference. There was somebody from back in my blogging days. We were in a giveaway circle together. It's how we all grew our audiences, and we talked multiple times every week for years. And after the blogging thing ended and we weren't doing that, I fell out of contact with her. I had not talked to this woman in, I swear to
Mm-hmm.
God, 10 years. And then all of a sudden she's in front of me in
Wow.
Boise. And I'm like, oh my God, Kathleen, where did you come from? And we caught up a little bit and we reconnected through social. She just introduced me to somebody who lives here in Vancouver, Washington, who we're having drinks with next week, who was an amazing interesting business person, super excited. And it's like, sometimes you just need to let life happen. Like, stop trying to control everything to the point where you're like, it has to work out. I don't like being in the business of collecting people. And I think I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs who are like, but my network equals I have to collect people. And it's like, how about if we like stop collecting and we start paying attention to the connection like this, like what you and I do? Because I think I don't know about you, but I feel like I have grown a whole heck of a lot in the past year by us developing these
Oh, yeah.
conversations.
Yes. And our conversation, I think this is part of like introvert land, right? Where we can go deeper on a one to one than you and me would ever be able to
Yeah.
do in a group setting. Because, it's all different. It's not, none of it's bad. Groups aren't worse than one to one. I get a lot out of group experiences because I'm a social learner and I learn a lot about how other people do things and talk about how they do things. But for you and me, it's been the one to one aspect has been really
Mhm.
important. And also, I think our styles of communication and our styles of reflection and evaluation have worked
Yeah.
really well together. Because you and me are both people who believe that data is neutral and we are complete data junkies.
Love how I love how when the podcast was launching, you were like, I have a screenshot for you. I have articles for you. I have metrics things. I'm like, they have nothing to do with what you're doing right now. And you're like, here you go. And I'm like, oh my God, I love you.
How's it? When I was like, just so you know, I pulled in 30 followers
Uh-huh.
based on the podcast, based on you tagging me in your post. Like I can drill it down to that, not me posting about the podcast, but you tagging me
Yeah.
in your podcast
Yeah.
posts. And there's probably a lot of people watching, 30 followers, what do you do? And I'm just like, yay, 30 humans to hang out with. 30 humans who cared enough to go follow. And they're real life humans, I checked.
Yeah. And I think too,
They're not fake mill people.
no, but like, let's reconsider the whole concept of scope. Like, for us, 30 quality people is the equivalent of 300 rando followers when you're a big influencer account.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, there's just so much that gets put into perspective.
Here's the other thing. So you're talking about growth, right? Like, I don't even think you know this specifically. When I say it, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But you're the reason I am now like, I reactivated my presence on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
When I worked for the university, we were LinkedIn forward. LinkedIn and Twitter were our primary accounts. And so I was super active and I understood how to behave on LinkedIn. And as I have catered to a different population that's more Facebook, Instagram forward, I pulled back from LinkedIn, but also LinkedIn's kind of for the service provider with clients in a variety of different industries because LinkedIn likes you to be all focused on one industry. But with you doing the podcast, and I talked to you about LinkedIn, and you said, I haven't been on LinkedIn a lot. I will share this on LinkedIn. For me, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm really out of the game on LinkedIn. And I'll just latch on to supporting the podcast on LinkedIn, and that'll get me in there, and I'll start interacting with other people and playing around. And I had fun. And now I'm posting to LinkedIn every day, which, by the way, if you're watching, you do not have to post to LinkedIn every day. Okay. I'm having fun, which is why I'm doing it. But like all of that, I don't think would have it would have happened eventually, right? Because that was on my roadmap of things to do, but it wouldn't have happened right now. And I think it would have been an obligation. And now it's not. I'm just like, no, Mary's not really big into LinkedIn. So let me be Mary's ambassador on LinkedIn. Let me be the School of Moxie podcast ambassador over here.
I mean, it very quickly drew a very obvious web of who's involved in what. We have Danny Berman, who's been on the YouTube channel. So I caught up with Danny B earlier this week, and he told me, like, you've been showing up all over my LinkedIn feed. And I was like, really? And I was like, because I'm never on there. And I was like, so I'm thinking the algorithm's cold, whatever. It's not tons of traffic, I don't think. And he's like, no, you're like everywhere in my feed. And I was like, check us out. So there was definitely like a thing going on. And yeah, I think that you always talk about generosity of spirit, like being generous, being a good follower so that you get good followers, all those things. I think they're just as important as the conversations that we're having. And I think you dropped a really great truth bomb here on this episode about leaving spaces. So.
And it's hard. I just want to reiterate, I understand that in many cases it's hard, especially if you've been part of a group forever.
Yeah.
Right?
And you want to feel like you belong places. So yeah, that is not always the easiest decision, but it can be done. I have a feeling we'll end up talking about that a little bit more. We're starting to get towards the hour mark because of course you and I could talk forever.
I was going to say, I was just looking at the recording time.
I keep watching the clock on this podcast.
It's going to be a 2-hour gig, but I'm here for it.
Let's keep talking.
Because I'm always here for it. This is good stuff. And I just want to just add one more thing in what you were talking about. Like, it doesn't have to be a big blow up. You know, there's a meme that goes around that I love to use because I'm a communities person. It's like, do you know, it is actually possible to leave a Facebook group without announcing your departure.
You know, that's a really, but that is such a good point. I think some people are like, I'm an entrepreneur, I have to declare everything. And it's like, no, you could just exit stage right.
You could just quietly leave. Most people will not notice you are gone.
Well, I've been going to so many conferences this summer, and you had like a sidecar seat because you've been with me on voice notes the whole time.
I've been to conferences by proxy.
And I feel like that physical action of being in a physical space is a really great metaphor for this, because like you go to a big conference and there's all these people milling about And it's like when you leave the space because you're going to go get a bite to eat, or you're going to go back to your hotel room, or whatever you're going to do, or you're going to go use the restroom, you don't stand in the middle of the expo hall and shout to the world, like, I am now going to
Mhm.
leave the exhibit hall because I'm going to go pee. No, you don't do that. You just like go to the restroom. And I feel like it's the same thing.
Or or it's like stand in the middle of the exhibit hall. I am going to leave because there is nothing here for my industry. That's really more
Yes.
how people leave their
Yes.
Facebook groups, right? Or I got a tchotchke at booth number 57 and it broke, so I can trust
Oh
nothing
my God.
here.
Yeah. It's just go. Just go.
But I think, again, going back to entrepreneurs, and sometimes for those of us who are women, we may not have a life experience of leaving something without a big drama being the
Ooh, oh
catalyst.
my God. I want to have a whole, we might have to finish this recording and immediately set a time for another recording because that definitely needs to be talked about. The drama rama. And that's kind of what I was getting at with my umpteenth point about feedback, which is this like, it's, I'm going to change my answer. I'm going to change the description. It is the consciousness part, but it is this addiction to needing that dopamine hit of drama happened. Let's go over here and talk about it. And it just doesn't really have to be like that. And I think if that's not
Yeah.
happening, then people feel rudderless and they're like, I don't know what to do. And unfortunately, it's been modeled so many times ahead of other female entrepreneurs, you get used to seeing it happen. And I have
Yeah.
consciously exited so many spaces because I was like, don't need that. That's not how I operate.
And I'm to that point is I've been somebody who's been like leaving with a big drama sort of thing is kind of a sign of
Yeah,
failure because you should have left
right?
before it got to that point, right? That would have been good self care.
Yeah.
And what you were really getting to is just that, just the gossipy thing, which I think many times is a deflective mechanism, right? Because if I can get all gossipy and make it about other people, then I don't have to face what I see in my.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're gonna model good community behavior, one project at a time. And we're gonna start with your
Yes.
episode next week because it is so good. So my editor,
I'm
Chris,
so
he had
excited.
sent me this message. Every time he edits an episode, it'll kind of be like, and he sent me this thing on Discord and he's like, Tanya's episode is fire. And I was like, what does this mean? And so then I got the edited audio and I gave it like like just a run through in my ears while I was cooking dinner the other night. And I was like, oh my God, this is so good. So I messaged you and I was like, your episode is fire. But we talk about community in there. It is so
Ask,
good.
yeah. So I have to ask, did the comment about discovering I'm a little bit of a narcissist, did that make it end?
Yes. And it's brilliant. And it is
I was like, I wonder if that'll get cut. But that was so good because I was like, ooh, this is ouchy. I do
no,
not like this,
like the
but
whole
it's
context of
true.
the thing. It's at the end and we're
Mm-hmm.
reflecting on some things and it's funny and it's you said something that I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people wonder. And the thing that I'm loving with everybody has been like the things that have been vocalized that not enough people say out loud. And we just said
Yeah.
a bunch of things out loud here. So the more we do it, the more we do
Renee's
it.
first episode
Yeah.
was really good
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Honestly.
All right.
Let's
Shall
wrap
we
up.
wrap up?
Until next time.
Until next time. This is so good. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for taking me down this path.
Yeah.
I feel like I zigged when
Oh,
we could have zagged, but it seems like we landed
same.
in a good place.
I'm like hot mess express coming out right now, but thanks for being my biz bunny.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.